Director, Maria Flodinek. Rethinking our approach to tissue analysis, decentralized cancer diagnosis and treatment optimization model was the presentation. Let's go to the second presentation.
It's about evolution of the digital revolution, and we will have 6 presentations. The first speaker is CEO Kwangmin of PhAST Diagnostics. He will talk about the future of rapid infectious disease testing powered by AI and ML. Please welcome Mr. Song with a big hand.
예, 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon.
Hello everyone. I'm Kwangmin, co-founder and CEO of PhAST. And would like to first thank the organizers for having me here. Very excited to present as Korean back here in Seoul, and happy to share what we are building here at PhAST. So brief overview of where we are. So PhAST is an AI healthcare technology company founded by an MIT team, and we're developing computer vision technology to fight antibiotic resistance. We are currently a team of 25, and I think this slide is quite relevant in relation to the past talks. So we're headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, but have 2 international offices in Zurich, Switzerland, as well as in Seoul, South Korea. So in Boston, we're located at the heart of biotechnology, Kendall Square, and we have 11 people there. And also in Zurich, Switzerland, where we are focusing on AI and data science, we have 17 members. And Seoul, in collaboration with Seoul National University Hospital, is our clinical validation hub. So we're centralizing all these global operations into the corporate operations. Back to this slide. Yeah. We are a Series A stage company, closed Series A earlier this year, including some strategic investment from Corp, one of the biggest healthcare player, as well as Naver Cloud, because much of our technology is cloud-based, as you will see. We are revenue generating company, and that's not easy for a healthcare company pre-commercial, but we've generated 100K revenue through a collaboration with Swiss Pharma Academia Consortium, NCCR, some of you may know. And then the core of our technology has mainly built through the 4 IRB approved studies, and we are broadly collaborating with many hospitals around the world. So in Boston, we work closely with Brigham and Women's Hospital at the Harvard Medical School. In South Korea, we work with Seoul National University Hospital, and in Switzerland, we work with University Hospital in Zurich. And we are targeting as a company bloodstream infection, sepsis, as well as a urinary tract infection, UTIs. And we are 12 months away from starting our clinical trial and expecting market commercialization in the US in the next 18 years through FDA 510K pathway. And then we have an initiative to shortly thereafter also commercialize in EU as well as in the APAC region, starting from South Korea. So this is our team. Myself, I'm an engineer by training, studied at MIT, founded the company together with my PhD advisor, Roman, who used to be an MIT professor, now a professor at ETH Zurich, where he leads the European team. We have data science, software, product, commercial function all across the globe, trying to commercialize globally. So we are focusing on antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, and there's been a workshop yesterday particularly focusing on this topic between Switzerland and Korea. It's called a silent pandemic, and since I'm here in Seoul, I wanted to also focus here that the projected death due to antimicrobial resistance in 2050, published by the UK government, you can see that the numbers are quite high here in Asia, and that's one of the reasons why we're interested in coming here. So focusing back to our initial market or primary market, the US, just to give you a sense of the number, there are 300 million antibiotic prescriptions annually in the US due to pneumonia, urinary tract infection, bloodstream infection, cold and cough, and as well as sexually transmitted infection. Wanted to also point out that out of these 300 million prescriptions, 50% are inappropriate, 25% are unnecessary, where where patients are given an antibiotic, and then the other 25% is inappropriate, meaning they got the wrong treatment. And one of the reasons why there is so many misdiagnoses is because the standard of care in infectious disease testing is slow, multi-step, labor-intensive because it requires culture. So you can see all those hands in the process, and it takes days to find 3 results. That is, do you have an infection? Infection screening. If you have an infection, what's the name of the bug? Identification. And if you have a bug with certain name, how do you want to kill them? That is to detect resistance. So here at PhAST, we are developing lab tests done in minutes using AI. And we are a fast, all-in-one, fully automated, and works directly from patient sample. And this is how we do it. So the paradigm that we're bringing in, which is very different from all conventional players, is very simple. The paradigm in medical imaging is to take snapshots, pictures, Z-stacks. We are taking videos. That's the only difference. So we are bringing dynamic imaging, time-lapse imaging, video taking to infectious disease diagnostics and beyond. And this is what you see. So what you're seeing here is an infected patient sample that we got from Brigham and Women's Hospital. In this case is urine. These moving dots are bacteria. So once we take videos, there are bugs moving around. All right, you have an infection is an immediate answer that we can provide in real time upon looking at the video. And then once we zoom into these videos, you're seeing 2 bugs. One on the left is E. coli, one on the right is Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So the one on the right, as you see, moves back and forth and back and forth, and E. coli move differently because they look different. So Pseudomonas on the right only has 1 tail, E. coli has many tails. The one with 1 tail rotates its tail clockwise, counterclockwise, it goes back and forth and back and forth. Whereas E. coli, they bundle and unbundle their multiple flagella, so they move differently. So at PhAST, we extract every single physical characteristics, as Maria sort of mentioned during her talk, physical characteristics or phenotypes in any given video. And instead of just looking at life and death, we look at more than 300 phenotypes in one go. So that includes the pattern of a trajectory, turning frequency of the trajectory, tortuosity of the trajectory, turning angle. Even their swimming speed is different. E. coli moves only 10 body length per second. Pseudomonas move 30 body length per second. And all of these informations are combined, and they all look different. So the Mother Nature had created everything so differently. Some look like rods, some look like cocci, which are these circled shape. Some look like coffee beans, some look like chains, some look like grape clusters. And all of this information get integrated as part of our database to infer, to call their name. And when it comes to resistance detection, what we do is simple. We expose patient sample to different drugs. And then we look at the change in the physical characteristics or change in the phenotypes. So as you see here, this is again the same patient sample. And then what we did is to expose same patient sample to 2 different drugs. The drug on the left is the drug on the right, that side, is working. The drug on the left is not working. So this bug is resistant to ciprofloxacin in this case. So if the bug is resistant to a given drug, their behavior don't change. If the bug is susceptible to a given drug, they're not dead yet, but their behavior change because they are about to die. So we extract all these physical changes in the characteristic changes to infer their resistance profile. And this is a snapshot of what that looked like. So resistant bug compared to no drug control, there's no difference. So the bugs look beautifully rod shaped, they have sharp turning angle, fast swimming speed, straight trajectories, whereas if the bug is susceptible to a given drug, they become elongated, they have wobbly trajectories, and because they had gotten fatter, they can't swim fast as before, so they slow down. So all of this information get integrated as part of detecting resistance, and the way we do it is all of these videos are stored in a shared database on the cloud, and we do not require any complicated imaging device. Even a cell phone can do it because thanks to Apple and Samsung, they have upgraded the camera so well that we just have to put a magnifier in front of it. So we have a 3-product line as a care delivery platform. PhAST Clinic, more geared toward hospitals. PhAST Pro, which will be used at the physician office at the point of need, as well as PhAST Mobile, which we are planning on launching. So we cover the full acuity of care, but also full side of care. And in particular, when it comes to mobile, it can also be integrated as part of the telemedicine ecosystem. So with this, we wanted to serve multiple areas. Obviously, as a diagnostic platform, we want to help hospital systems. We also want to sell our product to reference labs as well as telemedicine providers. But because we look at the phenotypic changes induced by certain drugs, this can also be coupled with this phenotypic information can be coupled with genotypic information, and we can also be used as a drug development platform. So we can also work with contract research organizations, CROs, as well as pharma. So as a drug diagnostic platform, it's quite obvious. We provide clinical decision support, we improve patient outcome, and we help save healthcare costs. As a drug development platform, we have programs across both clinical and preclinical. More on the clinical side, we want to help enhance clinical trial efficiency by supporting targeted patient recruitment. We can identify patients with specific infection, with specific resistance earlier during the pre-screening period to help with the the clinical trial efficiency enhancement. And there are obviously other applications because our platform is simple and affordable and scalable, and we wanted to also go beyond Korea, Switzerland, US, but also low and middle income country and make a global impact. And with that, I would like to conclude by showing a glimpse of the future of healthcare AI and big data and how PhAST is leveraging this core concept, AI and big data, to make an impact in healthcare. That is to transform from fee-for-service model to value-based care. And because of its connectivity, we want to connect healthcare providers, hospital system, as well as many Ps, patients, providers, payers, all within the network effect. And finally, with that, wanted to improve patient outcome and reduce healthcare cost. Thank you.
네, 박수 부탁드립니다.
Please give him a big round of applause. The future of healthcare powered by AI and big data. Thank you very much, Mr. Song.
Have with us Managing Director Kumar Chebrolu, who will be talking about the future of healthcare, AI, and big data. Please welcome Manager Director Chebrolu.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone is awake after lunch. So my name is Kumar Chebrolu, Partner Principal at Deloitte. I lead healthcare data and AI. Healthcare, in the terms of from US perspective, is serving all the insurance organizations and hospitals. Right. So again, why am I here at the Biomedical conference? If I'm from the insurance and hospital system, so there are lots of synergies between healthcare and life sciences, right? Which is the biomedical industry or pharma industry. So I want to talk about how we are talking about future of health and how we are looking at data and AI to leverage to find the synergies. And again, yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks to the organizers. And so let's go. Right, so I'm going to cover like 3 topics. Right, first one is around healthcare, data and AI, and future of health. Right, so how COVID changed the healthcare industry as a whole, and how innovation kind of accelerated during this time period. Right, last 2-3 years. The second topic is big data and AI in action, right? How precision care from the healthcare perspective is going into the next level and next steps. And the third topic is quest for enterprise AI strategy, right? AI is already there, data is there. A lot of organizations are incorporating AI into almost everything that they do. But is it mature enough, right? What we are seeing in the industry. So we have some survey results I want to go through. Right. So if you look at the challenges, right, healthcare industry is going through several challenges. It's nothing new, right? It's been going on for the last, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. Instead of reducing cost of care is increasing, right? The numbers I have are mainly from the US, right? 19% of the GDP is spent on healthcare. And compared to Korea, just my understanding is it's around 8% GDP is spent on healthcare, right? Which is a lot less compared to US, right? And also the access to healthcare is also, I think, going down the percentage. 43% of the patients or members or consumers, they don't fully understand their medical bill and what are the out-of-pocket costs and how they are getting the services and what kind of private insurance or public insurance is required. Right. In addition, again, the quality of care, right? Quality of care is also an issue, right? 65% of the patients say their physicians or doctors are not spending enough time talking to the patients, understanding their conditions, right? It just becomes mechanical, right? Because they have to take care of X number of patients on a daily basis, so the time spent is very less. But during COVID, right, virtual health, the concept of virtual health and remote patient monitoring kind of took off, right, just because members or consumers cannot go to the hospitals. So the virtual health really took off, and that helped a little bit more access to care. Right, but again, looking at the whole healthcare value chain, right, so starting from enrolling a member or a consumer into the insurance, and how do you prevent the conditions, right? How do you identify patients before they get into the conditions, right? So we talk about various comorbidities. Majority of the chronic conditions start with like diabetes or high blood pressure, right? So how do you find consumers with high blood pressure, and then who will be getting into diabetes, or who will get into the comorbidity of end-stage renal condition, or chronic kidney conditions. So how do you prevent them, right? How do you identify and prevent? Prevention became a lot more important than after the fact identifying what the issues are. Right, and then diagnosis, right? The incomplete picture of the consumer to support diagnosis. Right, we just heard several speakers talking about using AI to diagnose, basically, right? But do you have the right data that is available? So majority of the pharma industry is after the fact, right? So how do I try to find the medication, and right before? So the issue is there any way to prevent it? How do you identify the patient or consumer before, and then try to come up with some diagnosis? Right, and so on, basically, right, looking at treatment or service, lack of customer insights, right, a lot of members, consumers, they don't know what kind of benefits they have, how much they have to pay, which doctor they have to go and see. Getting the appointment time is very, very difficult, right, so how do you provide more access to care? And the last two are mainly on the claims processing and supporting functions. So I don't know, in Korea may not be a big issue on the claims processing because of a single payer system. There could be an issue around private insurance, right? So how do you file the claim and process the claim and validate the claim? Right, within states, because of a multi-payer system, right, so the claims processing is very, very important, right? And also the issue is it takes a lot of time and energy to adjudicate a claim, right? So when a patient goes and visits a doctor, doctor submits a claim, then insurance pays the payment to the doctor, right? At the same time, employers are they support their employees on variety of insurance plans. So they want to take care of their employees, and so how do you adjust the claims and take care of it? And also there are, the last one is difficulty matching patients to clinical trials, right? I think that may be the intersection for this particular conference, right? So how do you enroll consumers into a clinical trial? All right, so who has the data, right? Is the insurance company has the data, or the hospital system has the data, or the pharmaceutical biomedical organization has the data. Everybody has bits and pieces of data. Right? Interoperability is a super important thing. Right? If you don't share the data, it's very difficult to find population to enroll into the clinical trials. Right? So those are the problems. The idea is here, so you can leverage AI technologies to help some of these challenges in healthcare, right, meeting changing consumer expectations. And also at the same time, right, it's not about people versus machines. Right? A lot of people ask, oh, is AI is going to tell what to do? Right? AI is going to augment. AI is going to help the physician or the doctor to look at basically the data and make a right decision. Right, so with that, so just want to spend a little time on the impact of macro market dynamics, right? How COVID shaped some of the trends in the healthcare industry itself. So on the left side, it's all the market dynamics, right? Definitely COVID-19 pandemic shaped the whole industry from the innovation perspective, right? Usually pre-COVID, it used to take, the innovation cycles are approximately 7 years to innovate new ideas and get into action. Because of COVID, the innovation cycle kind of shortened, right? So you're talking about 2 to 3 years of innovation cycles and getting the new technologies into the mix. And at the same time, technologies are also evolving over the last several years, right? The access to the network and access to the computing power, right? Compute power is a lot cheaper with the cloud adoption, and everything is in the cloud. And memory is getting cheaper, network, everyone has Wi-Fi, and 5G is getting more and more important. So the technologies are also supporting the innovation cycle here. Right, on the right side, we have some drivers. Future of Health 3.0. So the 3.0 is basically Deloitte came up with Future of Health 5 years back. There was a 1.0, then 2.0, and now it's about 3.0. What are the things that shaping the market between now and 2030? Right. I'll just go through a couple of examples here on the market dynamics. Right. So we talked about, I think several speakers talked about climate change, health equity, stakeholder alignment. Right. The climate change is impacting a lot in several areas. Right. Because of the climate, there is an impact on the health of individuals, and right. So what needs to be done? At the same time, the health equity, disparities among income or access to the care, health equity is becoming more and more important within the healthcare system. And also the inflation, right? The inflation is a big thing over the last, 6 to 8 months, right? Because of inflation, there is a lot of impact on the healthcare industry and also at the individual level. Right, so we talk about a lot of mental health, behavioral health, etc. Right, so the inflation, climate, and all these things are affecting all those things. And a couple of future of health drivers, right? So consumerism, right? We heard one speaker talking about consumer centricity, right? You need to put patient at the center of things, right? You're serving the patient. So the focus is more on the individual consumer patient. Data sharing. Right, so again, data is at different locations, right, whether it's in the hospital or pharma, life sciences, or the insurance organizations. So how do you share the data, right? Without data, you cannot really do a lot of things, right? You can create synthetic data sets and do some prediction, but data interoperability, data sharing is becoming more and more important, and definitely in the next 5 to 10 years, that is going to be one of the key driver for improving the healthcare. All right, again, behavior change and nudging. All right, so we talk about a patient at the center. So how do you change the behavior? Right, so how do you intersect with when people go to grocery store, right? What kind of food they need to buy, what kind of food they are eating. Right, at the same time, the automobile industries with all the IoT devices, right, there will be a lot of sensors in each and every automobile and cars. So how do you take that data and use the data to nudge the behavior of individual patient? That's going to become more and more important. Right, and again, a couple of examples of like ecosystems, right? There was a speaker talking about ecosystem, why ecosystem is so important. right? So you need to bring all the different parties in the ecosystem and work together, sharing the data to basically to improve the healthcare system. And finally, it's all about sick care to well care, right? So far we are talking about sick care, right? When patients are sick, okay, how do you treat them? So instead of that, how do you go to the well care, right? So it's all about prevention, right? That may not be the good news for pharma industry. If everyone is well and healthy, you don't need medicine, basically. But again, idea is moving from sick care to well care. Right? Those are some of the drivers for future of health 3.0 between now and 2030. Right, and then next one is the technology journey transformation, right? So talked about a little bit of technologies. So if you see from last 5 years, right, the digital transformation really kicked off, right, with using the data platforms, the cloud, data liquidity, and some nano technology connectivity, right? 5G and Wi-Fi became a lot more basically embedded into the whole ecosystem. And robotics, right, robotic surgery, I don't know how many of you are familiar with in situ surgery, right, lots of surgical equipments using a lot of AI and robotics. Consumer tech, right, smart homes, mobile tech, there are so many IoT devices that you can track a lot of data, right, and material, etc. So again, in the next 5 to 10 years, we are talking about leveraging future omics, advanced engineering biology, right, next-gen sensors, more advanced AI, etc. Right, I know I have like 2-3 minutes left, so I'll quickly browse through a couple of slides here. Again, this is just AI 101. There are a lot of AI is already in place, right? We are talking about, especially in Korea, right? There's a lot of data, meaning because of single-payer system, you can leverage the data to do a lot of deep learning instead of staying at very high-level machine learning kind of algorithms here. Right, I'll just quickly run through. And how AI is being used today, right? It's about insight generation, engaging patients and members, and also the automation with intelligence. All the back-end processes automated to make it faster. And there are some use cases here: contact center management, precision care, population health. I don't know about fraud, waste, abuse in Korea, but usually there is a lot of fraud in the healthcare system itself, right? Not using the right coding mechanisms, not using the right billing mechanisms. Right, quickly, another example of big data and AI, right? We're talking about precision care. So far, the whole insight generation is at the group of population, right? It's at a cohort level. So what we are talking about here is individualized, personalized care or precision care. So how do you do that enough one personalization? That means you need a lot of data to understand an individual, and so that you can segment the population and send the right messages to their, whether their digital devices, mobile devices, or emails, so that you're nudging their behaviors to take care of their health. Right. Again, there are a variety of consumers here: consumers, employers, providers, payers, and life sciences. So the last one is important for this section, which is clinical trials and new drug discovery. Right. The payers, insurance companies collected a lot of data around individuals. So how can they use that data, share the data with pharmaceuticals, and do the clinical trials, right? And again, quickly, yeah, so social determinants of health is becoming more and more important, health equity, and then the AI, right? Because AI is getting mature right now, the trustworthiness and ethics is very, very important. Every algorithm needs to include some kind of explainability feature so that it's not, the algorithm is not biased towards a group of population, right? And quickly, quest for, I'll just spend like another 60 seconds. So I think I would highly recommend looking at Deloitte's State of AI in the Enterprise Survey, 4th edition. So we conducted a survey with 250 plus organizations, large organizations, on where are they with the AI maturity. There are some numbers here, right? A lot of 85% of the survey say they are expecting their AI investments to grow. And 90% of the healthcare leaders surveyed believed AI initiatives are important, right? I'll just quickly browse through a couple of slides. Right. Another one is, okay, so what's happening? So what is required, right? So in order to increase the maturity, right, you cannot implement AI in siloed approach. It needs to be an enterprise strategy, right? And so what are the key things to achieve the maturity, right? So the executive champion, a lot of sponsorship, right talent, and right use cases. You cannot implement AI for every use case, right? You need to have right business use case and implement the AI. And then the last one is some pitfalls through AI strategy. Right, I think one of the speakers talked about AI governance, data governance. So governance is very important, how you use the data. And also the workforce, right? It's not about replacing people with AI. It's about augmenting people with using the AI solutions. I think that's all. So, and there are some guiding principles around implementation of AI, right? And a couple of examples are here. Definitely compliance with privacy and security is very important, and scalability and reliability is another important factor. A lot of AI algorithms work with a smaller sample data sets, but when you scale it, it's very difficult to test it because of the data sets. You need to continuously train the algorithms because the data is drifting, data is changing, so it's very important to keep that algorithm continuously trained and retrained. I think that's all. Thanks for your time.
네, 고맙습니다. 박수 부탁.
Thank you very much. Yes, there has been some changes even before the pandemic, and now the pandemic has definitely accelerated the innovation in medical area. Now we would like to move on to the third presentation. Senior Associate Chung from Kakao Ventures will talk about how IT companies are embracing healthcare and how digital care becomes business. Please welcome Ms. Chung with a big hand.
네, 소개해 주셔서
Thank you for the introduction. Today, it's a great honor for me to be here, and I will talk about how digital healthcare can become a business. I usually meet very small startups from 1 to 5 employees. So what I'm trying to tell now is mainly for very small startup companies and also some startup companies inside a company. How can digital healthcare be turned into a business? It can be incorporated into an existing medical market, or it can be under the label of wellness and make it into a product that anyone can use. So I will talk about several topics that belong to each of these routes. If you're going into an existing medical market, you have to prove your value. Among digital healthcare providers, sometimes they come out with new investigation or screening methods. Even if it's the same method, depending on the target customer, target value, there could be a lot of difference. So it is important to plan well from the beginning. This picture is when a patient visits hospital for treatment, and basically the hospital will do screening and then monitoring of patients at the end. By diagnosis, we are usually talking about confirmed diagnosis, but confirmed diagnosis can be dangerous and costly. For example, in health checkup, let's say we get an ultrasound of our uterus and we found something in our uterus, but we will first to see if it is okay to leave it like that or go through some invasive treatment. So sometimes CT, MRI screening can be carried out, and they will determine the level of risk. And in the case of cancer, when you are determining the drug, concomitant therapy can be carried out to see which kind of drug would be most effective. In this workflow, let's say we are introducing a new therapeutics. When a new medical device is introduced, we will first to see if it impacts the patient outcome. Here, the primary outcome would be how long the patient is living and disease-free survival period. In other words, we are trying to see how our product is contributing to extending the life of our patients. So there's the screening phase, diagnosis, treatment, and monitoring, which is the step that can most easily prove its contribution to the outcome. Therapeutics is the closest phase, and the farther you go to the left, it is difficult to prove your contribution to improvement of outcome. Let me give you an outcome. Let's say we took a chest X-ray and we produced a certain product that can identify even the smallest tumor on the chest. But can we really prove that we have contributed to extending the life of the patient? Probably not. A small module or tumor might not be something that deserves immediate treatment. CT, X-ray, they are for classifying the level of risk. And even if we increase the possibility of identifying lesion by 4 or 5%, they might not have had significant impact on extending the lifespan or improving the outcome of the patients. So it is difficult to prove that kind of correlation. And we also have to look at the prevalence rate of the targeted disease. This is not about how many more products we can sell, but it is mainly about what kind of target disease we started with. Sometimes we look at the sensitivity, specificity, and we also have to look at PPV, positive predictive value. For example, for HIV, let's say we carried out a random test of HIV on the streets. Our prevalence rate in Korea is only 0.1%. Let's say we screen 10,000 people randomly, and about 1,000 people might have been infected. And based on specificity and sensitivity, even though you have tested positive, only 6.2% would have the HIV, which is quite low. But what if the prevalence itself goes up? Specificity and sensitivity numbers can be corrected, and higher the prevalence rate, the PPV will increase as well. So prevalence is not fixed per disease. And Omicron was case in point. During the Omicron variant spread, people, even if they tested positive in pathogen tests, people did not rely on the result, and it lacked in credibility. But as more and more people were infected with Omicron and people were tested with antigen, then because the prevalence changed, we can find a more effective subgroup of patients. Then how can we identify the group with high prevalence rate? Depending on the treatment case or the environment, the severity of the illness can change. For the prevalence case, for outpatient screening, it tends to be lower. Screening, inpatient, outpatient, the farther you go, the prevalence rate will go up. If we can develop a new diagnostics method, we have to identify the diagnostics that would target higher prevalence rate. This is DCAS AI, and it was able to prove its value because it targeted patients in intensive care unit. Because intensive care units have higher prevalence rates, so it was relatively easy to prove that this was effective. This was our investment case, not just for ICU, but emergency rooms where the prevalence rate is high. You can also easily prove the value of your product. This product is, let's say, a patient in emergency room had a CT on chest, and as soon as the test is done, it will immediately show the probability of various sorts, and it will also show the candidate list of illnesses, and you can easily decide what kind of intervention would be needed. But if you're trying to do that for outpatient or on the street or at home, the prevalence rate is much lower. So it might not require immediate intervention. So we are trying to use this first in emergency rooms, proving its value in that emergency room would be relatively easier. Third, what kind of efficacy are we trying to develop? Digital healthcare products must have certain value and also should be able to propose a method for that would change the behavior, and you will be able to find out when is the right time for intervention. And also you can simply decide what kind of drug you are going to use, what if the dose has been changed. And to save resources and to achieve economic benefits, the case on the bottom is reset 5, how that can be adjusted to prove value. The green chart here is while using reset case. The bottom is without reset case. So graph could leave room some misinterpretation, but the important thing is not just reset 5, but people went to hospital, and for the remainder of the time, reset 5 was used. So the frequency of hospital visit could be reduced by using reset 5. And we calculated how much medical cost has been saved. Then, now, for B2C healthcare environment, how can we create a business? In B2C healthcare, there are 3 major issues. First, it could be searched, it could be experienced, or it could be used to increase credit or trustworthy. Even if you use it, you might not be certain of its value, but if somebody gives you a good word of mouth, you begin to trust the product more. It's like a massage chair. We cannot prove whether this can actually correct our back issues, but it makes you feel better, so it's material for experience. So digital healthcare must be positioned somewhere between experience and trust. Second, perception of consumers. Consumers all love to care for their health, but they often say they don't know how. When we meet early startup companies, we often have this question. This animation on top, you can make a payment right away and see the webtoon right away. And coupon, when you make a delivery order, the products will be delivered next morning. But health is not like that. It takes time to take care of your health. And when you're quitting smoking or going on a diet, you have to work on it several months at least before you see the benefit. So the perception of consumers, because the benefit is not shown immediately, patients probably are not as aggressive about healthcare as they sound. And the cost structure, most of the medical cost in Korea is reimbursed up to 30% of the medical cost. But on the other hand, on reverse, Sometimes we create B2C product and for screening. People probably would pay because the screening result is more accurate. But it's difficult for people to pay because if you can slightly improve the accuracy of screening, but it is 4 times more expensive, then people would be reluctant to pay for the extra money. So having a non-benefit screening method would create a lot of cost burden on the patients. So I've told you all the difficulties in starting the business. So what is possible? They are more hypothetical in their nature. We could add certain products to existing products. Let's say we could attach that on existing consumer products, and we could make it less embarrassing, because if an illness has to do with the appearance or sexual in nature, people would be embarrassed to talk about this to their doctors. So this is a niche market, and wellness, if you can prove that you have clear value for wellness, well, that would be good. But what about inconvenience or pain? Cancer patients have huge pain, so they have to think about what kind of drug, how much would have to be taken. But you can remove pain immediately. So pain removal could be a good idea. But even in the United States, where healthcare market is quite advanced, they have very small number of success in this case. So we have to be very cautious. In conclusion, how can digital healthcare become a business? These are the take-home message. First case is, if you want to incorporate this in the existing medical market, you have to realize that proving the benefit would be very hard, and you have to find a medical environment in which your products can be used more effectively, and you have to prove with visible efficacy and visible outcome improvement. And in the case of B2C healthcare, you have to see whether your product is for trust experience. You have to determine this path to determine your value. In the case of trust-building products, you have to build a product structure in which people can feel the benefit right away, and you have to identify the willing to pay level for your product so that the patients would be more willing to pay for your product. I really hope you can be successful in your digital healthcare business. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Digital healthcare, in order to be business, Senior Associate Chung has given us a very detailed information and insight. Let me move on to the next presentation. Vice President Wilson To of Head and Strategy of Philips. He will talk about digitally enhanced and data-driven, how cloud is transforming care. He is joining us online.
President Wilson To, can you hear me?
I do, yes.
Thank you very much for joining us today. If you're ready, you may begin your presentation.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Wilson To, and I lead strategy for Philips and Health Suite. And I apologize for not being able to join in person, but looking forward to a very productive dialogue with everyone here today. You know, over the past few years, we've seen unprecedented change across the entire industry as organizations work together to address the pandemic these past 2 years. And much of this has truly accelerated a very clear direction for healthcare and life sciences organizations to really think about new ways in which transformation is driving health and care for individuals and populations using technology. And so core to the themes that Kumar mentioned a little earlier around the macro elements that are driving this change, or even what Jade mentioned in terms of how startups that are born in the cloud are enabling digital health across the entire spectrum of care. You know, we're seeing a broader spectrum of technology and cloud being able to enable these businesses and new business transformations to take shape. And so today I'll be talking a little bit about how digitally enhanced and data-driven healthcare has transformed not just startups around the world, but even large enterprises as they're going through their digital transformations. At Philips, our purpose is to improve the people's lives and well-being through meaningful innovation. We aim to improve 2.5 billion lives through 2030 and include 400 million in underserved communities. Through my work, I've had the fortunate opportunity to partner very closely with healthcare and life sciences organizations on leveraging cloud in order to transform and deliver on this purpose. When we look across the entire spectrum of health, at Philips, we see healthcare as a very connected whole, one that's very anchored in the quadruple aim of reducing costs while improving population health, but also through how individual personal experiences can be improved, as well as the work that healthcare teams are driving in order to help enable that type of approach. We see people living healthily and using prevention methods to prevent disease. We see clinicians being given the tools that they need to make a precision diagnosis and deliver personalized treatment for those that actually need it, and aiding in those individuals' recoveries, not only in the hospital and within the walls of traditional healthcare settings, but also at home and throughout the entire community. All of this is supported seamlessly through the flow of data. And as Kumar mentioned, when we think about all the vastness of data that's being generated, all that needs to go somewhere. And not only does it need to reside in a data lake of sorts, for example, but the interconnectedness and interoperability of those data elements actually need to generate value for individuals. So in partnership with our customers, we've been able to accelerate how the entire spectrum of care is truly transforming. And that cuts across settings, it cuts across people, it cuts across data, and it cuts across time. And in each of these different elements of where we're seeing where healthcare is driving towards, there's an intersection point between where the broader healthcare agenda is being enabled by technology. Because at the center of our shared mission and across all the work that we're doing with our customers and partners is the healthcare consumer and the patient, and the work that we're doing to support access and delivery of person-centered health. Driving the improvement of not only healthcare outcomes, but lowering the costs overall so that access can be applicable regardless where the individual is. And we're seeing this continue to evolve time and time again. And I think the pandemic has really served as a big accelerant for a lot of the key themes that I'll be sharing with you today in terms of the macro trends rooted in technology for why cloud is making even more sense for individuals to adopt this at an enterprise level. Over the past 2 years, the pressure on the healthcare and life sciences organizations has been completely unrelenting. The pandemic has really triggered and continued to challenge resourcing and resources, both at a systems level, at an individual level, and generally across, countries, and in many cases, around how the provision of care is really enabling folks to think about what does access mean. And today, as we continue to work our way through the pandemic, we see our customers embarking on a completely new reset. And that's one that's driven by cloud, refocusing on a number of new and key existing priorities, from leveraging big data, for example, and predictive analytics, all the way through to finding new ways and approaches for how they're extending care to meet the needs of individuals where they are. And through this, as they think about where those outreaches and extensions really take hold and shape, they're looking for new ways of continuing to improve their security and compliance postures in order to make it truly an integrated experience, one that's open, one that's trusted, and one people feel comfortable in doing. And by extending this care delivery model, they're looking to navigate new realities that are driven by these changing expectations from a healthcare consumer perspective, whether it's the expectations that they see from a personalization perspective or the norms that they've established in all aspects of their lives. And so those are driven by a number of key trends in the industry, from data becoming more and more of a strategic asset. When you think about how data liquidity has enabled the industry across healthcare, life sciences, and genomics industries to really think about what does it mean to help serve an individual in a much more personalized manner, or how to use that same data asset to figure out how to optimize resourcing within a hospital. That way, we don't have long wait times across and around the world for access to care, or being able to extend data to drive elements of preventative health for those individuals. These are key areas in which healthcare organizations are not only bringing data together to drive analysis and machine learning models from this, but finding ways of making it more usable and more valuable for the entire healthcare continuum. Secondary to that is the need to help address threats that are increasingly sophisticated from a data security perspective. Because when you think about at the heart of every security risk profile is the impact that it has on patient safety and care quality. And so we're seeing emerging themes for which organizations are starting to embrace the cloud to improve these security postures. And lastly, from a personalization perspective and how changing expectations from healthcare consumers are really driving the need for not only access, but what does it mean to serve N of one for these individuals and populations. And so as we kind of dive into the first theme and topic and pillar, we see more and more organizations are realizing the value and power of data. They're investing in new ways of accelerating data migration into the cloud, not just to reduce costs and get out of the data center business, but really understanding what does it take to actually bring data together and how do they support the overall global agenda of data liquidity in order to drive that towards a usable model for how the industry can adopt and optimize and augment a lot of what they're doing today. And as a result, organizations are reaping the rewards of machine-generated insights, both in the clinical as well as in the operational setting. Whether it's clinical decision-making and improving elements by which data is helping clinicians make better informed decisions, all the way through to how to lower administrative burdens such that key emerging challenges such as clinician burnout is being addressed. We expect to see how data is enabling more and more of these data elements and problems and solving it in a way that helps augment what the clinician workflow or what the patients are experiencing more and more so. And so as you think about the macro view of this, the data liquidity question also extends this entire spectrum of care across healthcare, life sciences, and genomics organizations as more and more of those data elements help devise a much more holistic, personalized approach to care. And as you look at kind of the second pillar and theme that I mentioned a little earlier, with this move and resurgence of data breaches, ransomware issues, we hear time and time again from customers across the entire world that data and privacy are going to be top concerns, and they remain top concerns. And organizations are quickly realizing that security really is a matter of patient safety. And so we're seeing more organizations think through their data strategy, their security strategy, and their enterprise transformation strategy, all converging towards an effort where healthcare data in the cloud is beyond just educational initiatives for leaders, but also the partnerships that they're driving with vendors in order to drive a much more security by design type of principle, infusing security in product design and development, all the way through to testing and deployment, and really applying those robust policies from an organizational level to help monitor and drive any sort of incident response managements in order to help scale a lot of the work that they're doing. And as long as these standards and practice, remain the case where we're continuing to raise the bar for how technology and new services in the cloud can help automate that or even drive towards a way of monitoring at scale, we're seeing a much more prevalent adoption of these types of tools and technologies. And when you think about, how that's manifested in an overall capability perspective, we're seeing an uptick in the type of medical grade cloud platforms starting to enable this for customers. That way, from a platform level, they're able to inherit a lot of the benefits from a security and compliance perspective, while they worry about, what is the differentiated value that they want to generate at the application or solution level. And so, more and more, at the crux of it is when I think back 10 years ago, when I started dabbling in the cloud and starting to practice in it, a lot of the concerns that worried the industry across healthcare, life sciences, and genomics about the reasons why they were hesitant to adopt the cloud have quickly become the very reasons why they're adopting it today. And they're realizing that they're not a data center business, and they're a health tech business. And so those foundational principles of how do I focus on the things that matter most to me as an organization, as an enterprise, as I'm innovating on behalf of my customer, are the things that I should be investing in. And so we're starting to see that thread becoming more and more the case for driving the modernization agenda for organizations at the enterprise level. And lastly, on that third pillar that I mentioned, when we think about personalization and the changing expectations that patients have in care, the value of delivering care beyond the hospital walls was more evident in the pandemic than any other time, with digital tools really helping keep communities safe while ensuring the continuity of care. And so this fueled a global shift in the expansion of care, not only beyond traditional care settings, but really deeper into the home. And individuals become more and more the case of seeking healthcare experiences that look and feel like the ones that around and across other aspects of their lives. One that's more personal, and even more so, one that they are at the very center of. So if you think about all the aspects of how everything from your financial services all the way through to how your shopping habits occur, everything is about you. And that's where healthcare consumers are wanting and expecting healthcare to be the same. And this cuts across everything from how they're gaining their medications to how they're interacting with their clinicians today. And for the first time, the consumerization of healthcare is really changing the entire healthcare journey for individuals, because data is helping inform a lot of that now. And it's fundamentally transforming patients from passive recipients of healthcare services to much more active participants in their own health. And now with that technology in place, healthcare leaders are not only able to secure the right technology infrastructure, as well as the platforms to ensure the maximum value of that data, but it really aligns to how you are actively including these individuals in order to meet the needs of the quadruple aim. And so when you kind of put that all together in terms of paths by which organizations are driving enterprise transformation, those that are born in the cloud already see this being the case where, they don't really have to go through this journey because they started there. Large enterprises like Philips have multiple paths by which they're modernizing their business. And like I said, we're going through this as well. And we've been going down this journey for a while. As we transformed our organization into a health tech leader, there were many synergies in place from a platform perspective that we didn't want to rebuild and we didn't want to duplicate across the entire enterprise. And so we had to be very practical and pragmatic about a platform level approach with Philips Health Suite platform in order to drive these different paths for which the businesses are able to focus more on their customers. And so whether it was a lift and shift type of discussion where we're moving from server or data center into Health Suite today, all the way through to understanding how to re-platform and take advantage of the underlying benefits of and tools and technologies of the platform. And this includes everything from security to data models and AI platforms and things of that sort, to actually make it easier for folks to accelerate not only the modernization component of their agenda, but that pace of innovation that they have as well. The third kind of pillar that we've set up for the teams is really think about ways in which they're repurchasing even some of the core solution investments that they've had, because this is a big reset button for how they can focus, like I said, more on value creation for customers and less about technology. And lastly, through tools like SaaSification programs and investments, and really rethinking how to decompose monolithic architectures and technology. There are clear paths for which enterprise transformation is really driven through re-architecture of these types of solutions. And so the different paths by which enterprise transformation is taking shape across the entire industry and around the world are really rooted in these four practices. And when you think about it, many companies don't really pride themselves for running data centers, especially on the healthcare side. And so this is where we're seeing more and more organizations wanting to work with Philips and Health Suite in order to drive that managed services approach to help them drive that scalability. And so when you think about how organizations are adapting, especially coming to address the pandemic, going through it, and even planning to think about how to adapt post-pandemic, a lot of these strong aspects of technology investments that are componentized really help set them up to really scale and drive the elasticity that's needed in order to meet the needs of their mission and vision. And so when you think about how that's manifested in not only at Philips, but really around the world, it's really helped enable that meaningful innovation that I talked about. And that cuts across the entire spectrum of care. So when you think about everything from toothbrushes to ultrasound devices to oncology informatics solutions, data is at the heart of all of this to make that a much more personalized and secure proposition for those individuals and customers. And so when you think about how Philips itself modernized into a health tech leader, we realize those same synergies that we use for ourselves in our platform investments were the types of solutions and capabilities that our customers wanted. When they saw Philips going through this, our customers raised their hands and said, we want to do that with ourselves as well. So how do we take advantage of the platform that you've built and you've created in order to drive our transformation agenda? And so we're seeing more and more organizations, both internally at Philips, but also externally around the world, wanting to build more and modernize on these core technologies, because they want to remove that undifferentiated heavy lifting that has kind of burdened them in the past, so they can really invest on the differentiated value creation story and narrative that they have with their customers today. And so core to that is the fact that cloud is a key enabler for this digitally enhanced, data-driven kind of care, because across the entire spectrum of care, when you think about how an atomic data element follows an individual, it shouldn't be one that's disconnected. And it should be one that drives towards meaningful value for not only the organization, but the customers that they serve. And so this has become a core theme in the enterprise transformation story for organizations all around the world, not just Philips. But it really tells us a strong story of what cloud has enabled organizations to be able to address during the pandemic. Everything from scalability issues to reliability and uptime concerns to the elasticity to help address any sort of surges that are occurring within the hospital system. And even more so on the life sciences side, when you think about how R&D and clinical trials have become much more decentralized and by their very nature of addressing these themes, we see these carry forward as new capabilities of not just addressing concerns in the pandemic, but really reinventing new ways and touch points for healthcare consumers moving forward. And so with that, I wanted to thank you all for your time, and more importantly, really thank you for all the work that you've done these past few years to drive a much more consumer-centric healthcare. You know, what I've learned in the past decade in practicing in the cloud is the importance and impact of when scaling workloads is a matter of saving lives. And that's something that I wanted to make sure that we all rally behind and think through as we not only drive transformation in the cloud, but really start building out the healthcare future together. So I look forward to continuing this collaboration with you all and looking forward to accelerating the dialogue in this industry. Thank you for your time.
네, 현지 인터넷 연결.
Because of the internet connection issues, there has been some glitches in the sound. I would like to ask for your understanding. So he has talked about the changing trends of medical institutions. Thank you very much, Vice President Wilson To, and we will move on to the next presentation by CEO Kim Il of Surgical Mind. He will talk about Metaverse, a turning point in telemedicine, use cases for XR in healthcare.
네, 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon. The previous speakers have mainly talked about how artificial intelligence is being used in healthcare. Now I'm going to talk about how XR technologies are being used in healthcare, how XR technology will change our future. XR includes VR, AR, MR. Then why is XR technologies receiving so much spotlight these days? I picked XR as the keyword because when we experience in virtual reality, the biggest drawback is that it's separated from the physical space. It's difficult to be immersive in virtual reality. In healthcare industry, this separation from the physical space could be a fatal flaw. So in this healthcare environment, rather than VR, AR, MR, XR probably is the most relevant and most useful technology. Then let me talk about MR. The source of this data is a director from Microsoft Korea. Well, we say augmented reality is closer to physical world and the virtual reality. And then between them, there is the mixed reality. In the physical world and digital world, where do they meet? This meeting point could be important to us because just by using smart glass, you can create an environment that is so good that you cannot tell if it's physical or digital world. That's what mixed reality is. So you would seamlessly experience the combination of these two worlds, and these two worlds would look seamless. So what kind of change would MR bring about in the healthcare industry? We are going to revolutionize the healthcare, and we are going to revolutionize the entire industry and the entire space by using an MR device. This professor is testing the functions of MR during surgery. So rather than VR, I believe MR in the super-connected environment will bring about more fundamental changes. In the virtual reality world, we are already doing a lot of connection. Oxford has this solution, and several years ago, a lot of medical training began to be provided through virtual reality. And I've been creating such training contents myself, but I will show you how MR is different from VR. This is also Microsoft technology. I'm sorry there's no sound, but basically MR is on top of the physical space, and you can add such object to the physical space, and it can interact with the user's input, and you can feel as if you're in the same space with people who are remote from you. And this technology is already implemented as we speak. So the remaining technology will be available to you for your experience in a couple of years. This is Microsoft Mesh technology. So with various users, we can transcend time and space. So that's what MR is. So how can MR be used in healthcare industry? In three categories. First is education. Medical students or nurses, they can get their basic healthcare training using MR, and collaboration between healthcare providers. Last but not least, navigation during operation. So it can serve as an intraoperative navigation, which can help surgeons greatly. And before we go into individual cases, MR, HT, let me go over some technology points that enable such innovation. What you're seeing is the most critical component. There are two ways to enable MR. First is video see-through, and the other is optical see-through. This HoloLens 2 HMD is optical see-through. Just like where you're wearing glasses, you can put this on over your eyes, and you will be able to see virtual reality on top of physical reality. And the image will be projected right to your retina, and you will be seeing this reality very naturally. It's a complicated technology, but just like this projector reflects on the wall, it will be reflected off on your retina. There could be various forms and shapes of this device. There's video see-through. Camera will recognize the physical space in front of you, and on top of the displays, we will create the same image. In terms of price, optical see-through is more expensive. Video see-through is cheaper. Mark Zuckerberg on Twitter, he shared this information, and this device would be around 1 million Korean won, and it has many applications. Existing PhAST was on VR environment, but PhAST Pro, it's not official yet, but considers MR environment, and various types of data are officially and unofficially publicized. This is the device. This is how you look when you wear it. Even though it's the same video through technology, it would look closer to your normal sunglasses. So it's going to be lighter and thinner. This is pancake lens. So as time goes by, these and new technologies will be adopted. So PhAST Pro, I believe, will be revealed next month. So beginning next month, you will be able to use mixed reality in PhAST environment. And this is something that's planned to be released next year, Apple Glass. I think they have the same methodology embedded. In this environment, it's not VR or AR, it's going to be MR. Then how can MR be used in our medical environment? Let me give you several examples. For education, in training physical or healthcare professionals, VR will lack in tactical dimension of the training, but with MR, you can use various devices in physical space so that you can also be trained on tactile operation and also learn how to operate the device. This is CA in Canada. Such companies are using HoloLens for MR type of training for healthcare professionals. If you use VR, you're in a separated space, entirely removed from physical space. But MR will let you learn around the bed, and all the trainees will be able to communicate together around the bed. Of course, people who are physically removed from this site can also join in on the training. So can MR really help you during interoperative situation? It is being proven that it can be helpful. I will stop this video, but this is an American physician remotely supporting African professionals as they carry out their surgery in Africa. It's a long video, so I would have to skip now. The important thing here is for education, collaboration, and intraoperative navigation device. In neurosurgery, since you cannot look at entire part of the brain, you might be able to have digital twin of the patient's brain for surgery. And in beginning 2 years ago, there has been a lot of research in digital twinning of brains. So in the actual surgery room, the physicians can wear this kind of device, and with this digital twin, they can put this into practice right away. I have tried to use MR device in collaboration. What we are interested in doing is not just in the operation room, but we want to test it in a very extreme environment. So in Antarctic, there's Sejong Institute. So the physicians who have been there have created an extreme physicians association. So only one professional is sent to these extreme conditions once a year. But in the unfortunate case, if there is a patient who needs the surgery, then the physician who is there might not be the best expert to carry out such operation. So what we are trying to do is, in Sejong Institute, we can send our MR device and HoloLens And if there is an emergency case, then the professional, healthcare professional inside can wear this device and have remote access. And the expert in Korea can guide the physician throughout this surgery. So it's going to look something like this. And it was covered in KBS last year. I can't hear the sound, but I'm not sure whether you can hear the sound, but by using MR, you can use CT and MR data of the patient, or you can have anatomical data of the patient in real time. What we really want is to provide real-time connection between the healthcare provider and the patient. With the research results and experience that we built in this field, our ultimate goal is to use navigation in the surgery room. During surgery, orthopedic surgery, plastic surgery, we are verifying this under such circumstances. So on top of education collaboration, we are also expanding our solution for intra-operation solutions. And AcroSir is the brand of our solution. So next year, you will be able to use this in the medical environment. So this is not in future, it's in reality. You will be able to see MR device supporting healthcare professionals in various healthcare environments. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. So XR technology will bring about huge change in healthcare. He has also talked about the trends in smart glasses as well. So we'll move on to the last presentation for this session. Principal scientist Gary Jansen of Philips will talk about Metaverse, digital twin in healthcare. He is joining us online. He is actually logging in.
Jansen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you for being with us. Please begin your presentation.
Thank you. So I can build upon the presentation that the previous speaker started. So I will explain the value and use of digital twin and also have a look at the metaverse in healthcare. So if you look at digital twins in healthcare is relatively new. But if you look at other industries, it's much more mature. And here I've shown a few examples of where digital twins are used. And if you look at the examples, especially in aerospace and automotive, digital twins are used in common practice. If you look at the car, all parts of a car and also the complete car are already virtually present before the physical product is there. And even some companies use digital copies of cities to also test the cars. And that is also done, for example, for electrical cars. In aerospace, there are great examples of where jet engines are completely in a digital twin environment. And based on the digital twin interaction with the sensor of the engines, you can do predictive maintenance on different airports. So there it is relatively mature. So it's booming. So why is it booming? And some of the previous speakers already touched upon a few things. So I would say there are several technology trends that enable digital twins to be there already now and be stronger in the future. And I divided it in three parts. Data technologies, compute technologies, visualization.
When Mr. Clark, who has been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, is seeing Dr. Sullivan, his cardiologist.
I hear presentation.
Although AF is a highly prevalent disease, it can be complicated to decide on the treatment strategy for a patient like Mr. Clark. This is where his digital twin comes in. It starts by
Can you
using Mr.
stop the
Clark's
movie,
medical
please?
data to create a patient-specific biophysical.
Okay, then I can continue. So, three technology trends area: data technology, compute technology, and visualization technology. So if you look at data technology, there's a lot ongoing in distributed infrastructure, like cloud and edge computing. And on connectivity, of course, you have the developments towards 5G and Internet of Things. Compute technology, also there you have quite some important trends. First of all, what is often forgotten is the cost of computation. That is going down dramatically. And the second thing that is increasingly popular and has value is hybrid intelligence. And what is that? It is the combination of artificial intelligence, so data-driven methods, with knowledge-driven methods, computational models. If you combine them, that can have, in a lot of cases, more value than just one separately. And in the visualization trends, of course, the previous speaker also touched upon that excellently. So we have a lot of developments in AR, VR, XR. So that enables the use of digital twins. So if you then look at the digital twin landscape that you can identify in healthcare, then it seems like a little bit a complicated picture, but in principle it's quite easy. At the right side, you see digital twins in the operational and clinical space in healthcare. So go from top to bottom. On the top, we have the system digital twin. So if you are in hospital, the big systems like imaging systems, CT scanner, MR scanner, etc., there you can use digital twins, and they are already used in practice. Why do you use them there? You use them to do predictive maintenance. You monitor the system almost real time, and with your virtual models, you predict when parts need to be changed. Then, completely at the bottom, hospital digital twin. So there are already examples where you basically for all the operations in hospital or selected operations in hospital, you have a virtual control center. You mimic basically what is happening in real life. You have sensors in the physical assets, and with that you can, with your hospital digital twin, you can monitor and optimize the operations. Then on the center part at the right, that is the most emerging area, patient digital twin and device digital twin, and often combined because devices are going into patients. And I will touch upon that more in the next minutes. The digital twins that you use in operational and clinical space, they don't come out of air, they should originate from somewhere. And that is shown on the left side. So basically, in the research and development space, you start building your digital twins of parts, of systems, of hospitals, of devices, and you also create virtual patients or virtual patient groups. With these models, you can translate these to be used in the operational and clinical space. That is the idea of digital twin. And I will focus now on the emerging field of patient digital twin combined with device digital twin. So the term digital twin I already used, but what is it actually, a patient digital twin? So if you are a patient or if you see a patient as a clinician, there are of course a lot of data that are relevant to assess the patient's condition. These are data that are directly related to that patient, like from the EMR records, imaging studies, genomic profile, family history, but also data that is coming from population health data sources. So you look at the patient in a broader context in the region where the patient is living. You have information from clinical and behavioral studies, and also emerging, more and more people have wearable devices that are able to monitor certain parameters of that specific patient. So that is a combination of data that is the starting point of a digital twin. It's not a digital twin yet, it's just the data collection. It becomes a digital twin if you add in silico intelligence. And what do I mean with in silico intelligence? That is the artificial intelligence, so machine learning, deep learning algorithms, but also computational models based on physics, physiology knowledge, or the combination of the two. And you feed expert medical knowledge into these models. Basically, that's the heart of a digital twin. So if you have the personalized data of a patient, you have the in silico intelligence, that combined, that can be a patient digital twin. It is only valuable if you can do something with it. So a digital twin should give some insights. On the one hand, insights to assess the status of the patient, the current status of the patient, but you can use also the in silico intelligence, the models, the artificial intelligence, to predict what will happen to the patient in the near term. And of course, in the future, you will also be able to predict what will happen in a few months, but currently, the status is you can predict what will happen in maybe the next hours or weeks. And finally, you can use the in silico intelligence to compare different potential treatment scenarios on the specific patient, just virtually, and you give the information to the clinician can make a better informed decision. So the patient digital twin is used by the clinician to make better decisions. It's not replacing clinicians, it's supporting the clinicians. So how does that look then in real life? Where are we now? So in the previous slide, you saw a patient digital twin picture of a complete body. That is a vision, because there is not a digital twin currently in the world that that covers the whole patient for all the organs, including the brain, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, the bladder, etc. It's not there. So the current status in the world that we have models that are used on organ level or sub-organ level. And here I show two examples. On the left side, and by the way, this is in clinical practice already. So at the left side, you see the Philips dynamic heart model. What does it do? Based on ultrasound images of the patient, we automatically extract the anatomical details of the heart. And that is what you see in the picture at the center left. And if you have these anatomical details, you can also extract automatically physiological parameters. And the physiological parameters are then used by the clinician to support in diagnosis. This technology of automatic make the anatomical details from an image, we use that in different modalities, not only ultrasound, but also X-ray. At the bottom left, you see the same technology used not in diagnosis, but in intervention guidance. So for a specific patient, from the ultrasound images, we automatically extract the anatomical details. This anatomical model is then overlaid on fluoroscopy in an intervention. You see here an intervention in the heart clinic Hirslanden in Zurich, in Switzerland, in Europe, where they do a valve intervention, heart valve intervention. Then on the right side, it's a different tool. It's a tool from a small company, SimCure. It's a planning tool. This is a planning tool for treatment of cerebral aneurysms in the brain. So what is happening there? What you see on the movie is you see a part of the brain of a specific patient with all the anatomical details, and that is combined in a model with potential devices that can be used by the clinician to treat the aneurysm. So this planning tool then compares different devices with different locations for this specific patient and gives information to the clinician to make a better informed decision. What is the best device for this patient and what is the best position? Of course, clinician has experience, so clinician knows what kind of position is best. But sometimes with complex patients, you need additional information. And this model gives it. So basically, you have a digital twin of part of the brain, digital twin of the device, you combine them, and you can give real-time information to the clinician. This is used in clinical practice. You see that at the bottom right, because there in a clinic in Paris, together with this company, we visualize the outcome of the planning tool of SimCure in our Azurion platform. The Azurion platform is a platform used in the cath lab where minimally invasive interventions are being done. And in this case, in Paris, the information from the tool is shown live on screen in the cath lab, and the clinician can use that information to make the right decisions. So these are two examples in clinical practice. One example is focusing on the heart, the other example is focusing on the brain. So that supports also what I said before. There are examples on organ level or sub-organ level. There are not examples on the full body. Another thing important to mention here, on the left side I showed you it can be used in diagnosis phase and intervention guidance phase. And on the right side I showed you it can be used in the planning phase. Remembering again the definition of patient digital twin, you have the data, you have the in silico engine, and you create value there. Of course, it can be a point solution, and what I show you here are point solutions in one specific decision point in the patient's care part. But ideally, in the future, you want to have the patient digital twin have value in multiple decision points. So the same digital twin has value in multiple decision points, not only in diagnosis, but also in the planning, in the guidance, and in the monitoring afterwards to prevent deterioration of the patient. So if you combine all that in the vision, and I will show the movie in a second, then you have this patient digital twin that basically travels along with the patient during the care part, or maybe even along the life of a patient, and adds value at several moments of that patient journey. So let's now look at the movie.
Imagine a future where personalised healthcare will provide every individual the right type of care in the right way and at the right time. Imagine that every patient has a digital twin, a virtual representation of his health status. Let's explore how this could play a significant role when Mr. Clark, who has been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, is seeing Dr. Sullivan, his cardiologist. Although AF is a highly prevalent disease, it can be complicated to decide on the individual treatment strategy for a patient like Mr. Clark. This is where his digital twin comes in. It starts by using Mr. Clark's medical data to create a patient-specific biophysical model, including a virtual version of his heart, which looks, behaves, and reacts just like the real one. Through a seamless flow of data and advanced analytics capabilities enabled by Philips Health Suite, Dr. Sullivan can connect Mr. Clark's digital twin with intelligence on similar cases and select ablation as the therapy with the best possible predicted outcome for him, both on the short and on the long term. Dr. Sullivan carefully plans the procedure by simulating various ablation scenarios on Mr. Clark's digital twin. This enables her to select the one with the optimal computed result. The chosen ideal scenario forms the basis for real-time intervention guidance. During the procedure, all taken actions, as well as any unforeseen situations, are processed real-time into Mr. Clark's digital twin to redirect if necessary. As a result, Mr. Clark received his treatment at the right time, in the right way, with the best possible outcome. This is one of many potential cases in which the digital twin adds value to the healthcare system. From personalised diagnosis and therapy selection to procedure planning and guidance, tailored to the patient's physical characteristics, medical history, current condition, and future needs. Innovation and you, Philips.
So the vision in this movie shows a glimpse into the future. The example shown in the movie is more close by than you think. Because if you look at the electrophysiological heart conditions that patients may experience. There are several parties in the world that already are testing out these models for those patients that you have seen in the movie to add value in clinical practice. So to predict where to ablate, how much ablations you need to do. So these kind of models will be used in clinical practice, in my view, within a few years from now already. And the examples that I showed before, the Philips heart model and the SimiCure example on cerebral aneurysms, are already used and tested in clinical practice. So that is on digital twin. And digital twin is, in my view, an emerging field in healthcare. So we are, you could say, starting it up. So then, if you make the next step, and connecting to the previous speaker, on the metaverse, that, in my view, would be a next step. And let's spend 1 minute on that one. So, from my perspective, what I have seen from Metaverse, so basically you could say the Metaverse is a virtual reality space in which users can interact in a virtual environment, and most often what you see in the news in a social environment. But the funny part, in my view, is that basically, if you look at history, in 2003, Second Life, a game was launched by Linden Lab. Second Life is a virtual world where people can choose their own avatars and can interact with each other. So that is already, you could say, a metaverse, but not with VR. 2017, a different game was launched, Fortnite, from Epic Games. And what you see there is that also there you have parts of that game where people can interact with each other. There are also virtual concerts there. And what I forgot to mention, in Second Life, there are also virtual conferences there, even medical conferences being organized recently. And of course, in 2021, well-known Meta started with Warzone Worlds, and that is the third real VR environment. But that's still in a social context. So what now in the healthcare context? And the previous speaker already showed a few things. Let me add only one example here in the same category, where you see in the central picture here, you see 4 faces, 1 real face and 3 from a different location. So they are in a different part of the world, and they connect virtually to the person there with the VR glasses on. And they are looking at the brain of a specific patient to discuss what is the best treatment decision for that patient. So there you see already, you could say it's an example of metaverse, but this example basically was there talked about metaverse. What I see is there are a lot of opportunities for metaverse in the future, and certainly in the training environment, made a remark on, it's already very beneficial. If I look at adoption in healthcare, in my view, it's further away. There are a lot of things that need to be developed further. For example, security. You have to look at the cost of VR and VR handling, and definitely interoperability between the different universes, the virtual universes, is an important thing to develop further. So in my view, digital twin is earlier, and metaverse is the next level where you can also use digital twin. So finalizing, in my view, the take-home messages. I hope that I showed you that digital twin application in healthcare is compared to some other industries relatively young. It also has specific challenges related to healthcare. Digital twin should serve a purpose. And as my colleague from Philips already addressed before, it's about addressing the quadruple aim, better health outcomes against lower cost, improve patient and staff satisfaction. Digital twin should support clinicians in decision making, bringing the right insights at the right time for the clinician. Opportunities are huge in all parts of the health continuum, and the first proof points, the point solutions that I showed you on organ level, have been generated and are also tested and being used in practice. Metaverse is a very interesting concept in my view, but further away and digital twin from delivering real value to healthcare and to be used in real clinical practice. Thank you for your attention.
네, 박수 부탁드립니다. 네, 현지 인터넷 상황.
So because of the internet connections overseas, there has been some glitches in the connection. I would like to ask for your understanding. Mr. Jansen has updated us on the current status and direction of digital twin technologies in the healthcare industry. And we'll now move on to the panel discussion. Senior Director Kim Chiwon from Kakao Ventures will moderate this session. Please welcome Mr. Kim with a big hand.
네, 계속해서 발표자분들께서도
So I would like to ask all the speakers to take their seats on the stage. And Mrs. Vice President Wilson To and Principal Scientist Gary Jansen, they are also joining us online for this panel discussion.
네, 발표 함께.
So all the speakers, I'm Kim Chiwon, Senior Director from Kakao Ventures. And this second session seems to be the most time-consuming session with the largest number of speakers and especially the largest number of foreign speakers. So I think the organizer has paid special attention to planning this session too. And we started from the high-level picture, and the CEOs of individual companies have talked about product-level changes and technologies. Since we have many discussants, I don't think we can have in-depth discussion. So I would like to ask only one or two questions to each speaker, to Mr. Son and Mr. Kim and Mr. Jansen from Philips. I want to ask you a common question. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, there are changes that are going to stick, like remote working. And before COVID-19, we never thought some of the things would take place, but things that were imaginable before COVID is now definitely taking place, like remote medicine, telemedicine. In the US, some hospitals are covering 50% of their patients with telemedicine. But in healthcare, after COVID-19, remote telemedicine has been reduced as we came out of this pandemic tunnel. So in some cases, the changes brought about by the pandemic could be short-term and transitionary, not long-term. Probably the conservative attitude of the medical industry could have something to do with this. So my question is this: in your individual products, or for your customers or potential customers, I'm sure you've had a lot of conversations with them. Have you ever felt any kind of barrier? What kind of barriers have you identified in talking to them? And to bring this barrier down, what kind of changes do you think we need to make this technology come closer to us? So Mr. Son, would you like to go first? You have talked about the rapid infectious disease testing. Can you share your interaction with customers? Should I speak in Korean or English? Well, it's up to you. Okay, I will speak in Korean. I'm Kwangmin from PhAST. And as Senior Director Kim Chiwon has mentioned, our rapid infectious disease testing, as we built on more case studies for telemedicine during the COVID-19, many people were very much excited. But as the pandemic tapered, we are once again seeing very strong resistance from healthcare professionals. Of course, COVID-19's impact will not last forever, but the general public and the medical community has seen the glimpse of the potential offered by telemedicine healthcare. So our PhAST platform is something that can be used from top to bottom. not just the major healthcare institutions, but individual consumers. But our company wants to target major hospitals first because we need to build the trust of the medical professionals. And if we can do that, it can easily cascade down to the individual consumer level. So that's the strategic direction we are looking for. In spite of that, many people, I don't think they would have welcomed you with open arms. So what was the biggest barrier you felt or identified? For rapid infectious disease testing like ours, it all depends on the performance. Many people are doubtful of the performance that we can pull off. So even though we can offer an easy solution, we have to find the rigorous pathway of getting the approval from FDA. And for telemedicine, even though it is our major theme for our company, our strategic direction tends to be very traditional. We have to follow the traditional path first, mainly because of this resistance from the healthcare professionals. I think that is a very important fact. Many people who are working in the industry might have felt this once or twice. We know certain is fancy, but that is not enough to be accepted by healthcare professionals. Basically, the basic grammar of healthcare professionals, having the thorough scientific evidence and getting the regulatory approval, getting the insurance coverage, that is the most traditional path. And once you can identify that, that is most effective. My next question is to Mr. Kim Il from Surgical Mind, and I know you personally, so I know that you have tried to use VR, using VR to train healthcare professionals. So you might have met various healthcare professionals, and I know you have worked very hard to get your technology accepted. So have you felt a biggest barrier that you felt? When I tried to use VR, our targets were physicians, and the physicians had to pay for this solution. So we focused on education at first, and personally, you have to see the reason why you have to use this device for solution, and convincing them to use this was biggest hurdle. But as we introduced MR glass, it's a matter of familiarity. Like you have to operate in the air, up in the air. So there is some inconvenience or uncomfortableness in operating the device because you have to operate up in the air. And the previous generation who are not used to using smartphones, we did not have a clear standard about how to operate these devices. But with the smart glass, like Professor Hong from Yonsei University has said that when physicians buy smart devices, they usually want to be the 97th out of 100 doctors who purchase this. They are very conservative. So they were very much resistant to using glasses and other devices for diagnosis. But now, 6 months on, they are beginning to come up with very innovative ideas about how these glasses can be used. So the biggest hurdle was how to make them get used to, familiar with these devices. And creating a user interface for MR, that was the biggest hurdle. Thank you very much. Our last speaker, Mr. Jensen, seemed to have made a similar point. So still kind of far away, not really far away, not around, but not around the corner. But CEO Kim Il has talked about getting used to the hardware. And this could be used across the industry, not just the healthcare industry. It could be used outside the hospitals, and when that happens, it would be easier for hospitals to leverage its technology more generally. And Mr. Jansen from Philips, I want to ask you another question.
Well, regarding digital twin, I frankly speaking didn't know that Philips had a digital twin product. Already a couple of products are in the market. Some of the products are waiting in line to be launched. So far, together with the patients and the hospitals and customers, what are the biggest hurdles that you felt? Can you share that with us?
Question. So if you look at the biggest hurdles, and I think I also need to echo some of the answers of the previous speakers, because indeed our view is also that healthcare is quite conservative, meaning that they have a certain workflow and they are used to the workflow and they stick to the workflow because that is what they know and that is what they are good at, and that's rightfully so. So if you come with a new solution, then boundary condition 1 is that it should make their workflow easier. If you come with something that asks from a clinician to do something extra, then it's almost already from the beginning a no-go. That's one hurdle. So that also, to mitigate that hurdle, we try to co-create. And co-create means that if we develop a new solution, we try to involve clinicians as early as possible in the development process, so that you can iterate fast with the clinicians on what exactly now has value to them. Because we as a company, if I have a technical background, so with my technical background, I can have a certain view on what is useful, what is valuable for a clinician, but I'm not in that clinical workflow. So my perception may be different from reality, and that's why you need to involve the clinician as early as possible. A second thing is, and that was also mentioned, you need to create trust in your solution. So making the workflow easier is one thing, that's nice, but then, okay, how do they trust the thing that you bring to the market? Trust is created by validating it in a proper way in clinical practice, in clinical trials, so that it becomes clear with numbers, quantitatively, that what you bring indeed adds value and is accurate, because otherwise there's no trust. And another aspect of trust is if you bring a virtual solution that has, for example, a lot of artificial intelligence in it, then it can be considered as a black box. And what clinicians don't like is black boxes. So you need to be able to explain what is in it. Also there, an early interaction with clinicians can help to make that explainability better. Third aspect, and I think that was also mentioned, so if you look at the conservative healthcare world, it's also not so strange, because if you look at how they were educated in a certain way, focusing on medical developments and knowing about patients. What you see in the training of medical professionals is that there could also be a step up in bringing more digital technologies in the training already. And then you could see that the new generation of clinicians are also more easily adapted to digital technologies. Those are the three things I think are important in our conversations with clinicians.
네, 좋은 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you for the wonderful comments. So to sum up the answers from three speakers, we could see that the future is with us, but they are not just diffused or evenly spread. This could be interpreted as the technology has been advanced and we are quite close to the future, but personally it means something different in healthcare, and not just for healthcare, technology advancement is not the only thing that we need. We need to bring down various barriers and hurdles to go to the next step So we need to make a lot of efforts to transcend those barriers. So I would like to thank the three speakers. Next, we would like to ask the next question to Mr. To from Philips.
그곳으로 질문을 드리도록 하겠습니다.
There was a question from YouTube. It's a similar question, but let me read the question. Inside Korea, there are a lot of hospitals, and most of the hospitals, they have data center. Physically, they build their own in-house data centers. To my knowledge, not only Korea, but many countries have already built in-house data centers. However, working at Philips, I know that you made a lot of effort to persuade the hospitals so that they can adopt cloud-based data storage or data centers. What kind of protest or what kind of insistence did you hear? What worked really well to persuade the hospital instead of using in-house data centers? What worked really best to move them to the cloud?
It's a great question, and is certainly one that is not unique to any country or any type of healthcare organization by any means. And what you'll find is that the norm in the industry of even kind of pre-pandemic era has been one where organizations are looking to snap into models where whether it's by capital expenditures that they're purchasing servers, or in how they're working to create data centers with in colo locations, for example. And that's allowed them to look at data from a transactional approach where they're simply storing and accessing and transacting with the data. And what we've seen moving forward, particularly with customers, has been the norm that data is becoming that strategic asset that they're using to transform their own organization. And with that comes the notion that you can't just rely on being able to buy as you go, but really go through a case where you're paying as you go, but also paying as you grow. And that's enabled organizations to buy into the understanding that elasticity and scalability are actually key benefits in order to better serve customers or patients at the end of the day. And so in how Philips has developed products, for example, a lot of that has gone through cases and iterations and transformation for how just the core conversation about value creation is for those types of customers, where the beauty of software as a service, for example, means continuous value creation and delivery for those customers. And so that's changed the perspective for how organizations are not only procuring and standing up technology services, whether it's storage or compute, but really thinking through those value-added services for what they're doing with their data now. And in many cases, standing up your own data center and investing in those undifferentiated types of services generally don't make sense from a financial perspective anymore. And it certainly hasn't made sense from how they're snapping into either industry standards in order to accelerate that pace of innovation. And you see that more and more in just how, whether it's data platforms or AI platforms that sit on top of these data lakes, or even just centers of data gravity in order to make use of that data. And so this is why in the vast majority of healthcare startups, for example, are born in the cloud, because they can take advantage of and grow with the technology base, understanding that each of those elements are decoupled by their very nature. And as they continue to swap in, swap out technology, they can maintain a very crisp security profile, but take advantage of innovation that is architecting the future set of solutions that are out there today.
네, 경험에서 우러난 말.
Thank you very much, Mr. To. And fifth is to Senior Associate Chung from my company, Kakao Ventures. So we work in the same company, so we have already fixed the question that I'm going to ask her. And this diet service room, I thought you were planning to talk about that case, but you couldn't because you ran out of time. In your presentation, Ms. Chung, you said that B2C healthcare is going to be a challenging industry where it's going to be difficult to turn digital healthcare into business. But Loom was such a phenomenal success. There's no rule that says I cannot be as successful as Loom in Korea. And in your presentation, Ms. Chung, you were going to talk about Loom. So can you share some of the lessons of Loom with us? Thank you. Well, I don't want to mention the specific name, but Loom, you would think it's easy to get the app downloaded, but it has taken the traditional path of diabetes control in the United States. In order to get the BPP program approved, you have to prove that weight loss is helpful for preventing diabetes. Loom was a unique case because Omada, which had a similar model, was B2BC, but Loom went for B2C. So behind the program that seems easy to use, but they are backed by very strong evidence. And that's why they were able to position itself strongly in the market. So healthcare companies, when they carry out healthcare or clinical trial, it's easy for them because they're used to it. But when it comes to user experience, it is challenging for them because they're not familiar with this territory. But those who come out with wellness products, they're great at coming up with agile products and starting with the basics and slowly building on. After they have built up everything, they want to use it for medical purposes, but at that point in time, they have to go through the clinical trial all from the start. So even for wellness, you have to think about your target customer, target disease. And for diabetes, you might want to know the hurdles or come up with a segmentation, micro-segmentation of the customer base. That would be helpful. So from a slightly different perspective, Ms. Chung, this company called Loom, it is a familiar name to many people in Korea. Omada also has a similar program for preventing diabetes. And people have to lose their weight to reduce the probability of diabetes. They're doing the same thing, but they have entirely different business model. Loom has B2C model, selling directly to customers. But you said B2C is going to be a challenging industry. How did Loom become so successful? When you visit their website, they never mention diabetes. They just say it's a healthy diet. People were already using a lot of money for diet, so they have less barrier for spending money for digital healthcare. But Omaha has emphasized diabetes from the beginning. But patients, once they see diabetes, they become less willing to pay. So Omaba is more popular among employers or companies that employ people. They are more willing to pay for this kind of solution. So without knowing the detailed context, and if we just interpret these business models without deep understanding, that could be misguiding. So I have said I will give you each one question. So next is Mr. Chebrolu. You have talked about the hospital's AI cases.
You have shown us a lot of pictures. While you are involved in consulting, and you met a lot of different customers and clients in hospitals, right? So if there are any owners of the hospital who are sitting here today, what kind of message can you give them? What's the first step that they must take? What do you recommend to them? I'm sure that they would like to know that. So can you elaborate right away? What should be their top priority?
Definitely, the technology is there, and they need to trust those algorithms work, and collaboration is going to be important thing. and the outcome is there will be cost savings, right? The idea is, so how do you help clinicians with more data so that they can make the right decision? At the same time, the solutions are not replacing any clinicians, right? So clinicians have been doing this for long time. And so their fear is, okay, is this data is good enough? And can they make the decisions? And can I trust in that system? Right. I think once they trust it, and definitely I think they believe in the system, and they encourage and they sponsor and basically implement AI at a large scale. But again, they all start with a proof of concepts and try it out, test it out, and then scale the solution enterprise-wide.
네, 감사합니다. 오늘 대단히
Thank you very much. We had speakers from diverse background, the finger on the pulse experts of the industry. And if we had more time, we would have gained more insight into their expertise, but we have to wrap up this second session, panel discussion now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.